Shalom, shalom. We give our honor and glory to Yahweh. Ba'ashem Yahushua, brother Yahweh, the servant. Right? So today, first one say Shabbat Shalom. We get into husbandry. It's a part of our culture, right? So, in recognizing that you're an Israelite, right, you got to remember where we come from, right? How our forefathers, how they used to live, right? And one of the things our forefathers very good at, right, was husbandry. So when you go into husbandry, that's basically we're gonna go into the definition first, right? We're gonna kick it off with the definition, right? Go to that. It says husbandry. The It says husbandry, the cultivation or production of plants and animals, agriculture. So our people was very big on agriculture, right? They knew how to plant different crops. They knew the best season to plant them in. They also was good at with cattle. We see what happened with Jacob, how he was with the cattle and things like that. And even David, right? How he was good with sheep. You know, we referred to as sheep. So our people is very big again on agriculture, right? It's part of our heritage, right? So when you think about right Passover, right? That also has to do with agriculture, right? Feast on Pentecost has to do with agriculture. Feast of Tabernacles, right? Has to do with agriculture. Our high holidays also involve agriculture, right? So let's go to these articles. All right, and we're gonna get some scriptures too, but I'm gonna go to this one first. Right. So it says Old Testament laws, harvest seasons of ancient Israel, right? It says various biblical laws and stories refer to ancient Israelite crops and harvests. It may therefore be helpful to have some general information about the harvests in their seasons. And then also it puts you in perspective of what was going on in the different times and different stories in the Bible, right? It says major crops of the land are listed in Deuteronomy 8:8, right? Wheat, barley, grapes. We gonna get it ourselves though, right? So let's go to Deuteronomy 8:8. So it says this. This is Deuteronomy 8:8. But I'm gonna start at verse 7. It says, "For the Lord God bringeth thee into good land, right? A land of brooks of water, of fountains and depth spring out of valleys and hills." And you got to think about the land of Israel was really a good land, a very fertile land, right? That would be referred to as the Fertile Crescent, right? So that was a very, very fertile land that we was living in, right? It says a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil, oil of olive and honey. And all these different things, right, helps, especially back then, right? A lot of times they had would you have a barter system where you would trade things that you produce. So we could trade wheat, we can trade barley, we could trade vines, we trade fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil. So you gotta imagine what kind of economic system we had, right? Well, we had gold, right? We had different kind of cattle, we had sheep, we had goats, we had ox, right? Then we had all these different plants, right? And it says, so when you imagine that our economic structure had to be top tier, right? So let's go back to this article, right? So it says various I don't know why it's popping like that. It says various herbs and legumes, right, were harvested in spring. But most important spring crops were cereals, right, which is your barley and your wheat, right? So what would happen is you have the barley would come up first, right, and then the wheat, right? So you had the barley, then the wheat. It says newly harvested grain, right, could not be eaten until the first fruits of grain, right, had been offered, right, after the offered on the day after at the Sabbath, right, of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right. So when you look at how the Lord has everything set up, right, you got the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right. Then you got the after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, you got the next thing coming is the Feast of First Fruits, Pentecost, right. So with that being said, you gotta have your crops ready for the time of Pentecost. So just like how through the spirit you want to look things on a spiritual lens, our forefathers constantly putting in work, right? Getting their crops ready for the next harvest. This they got to harvest this, they got to harvest that. How much so in your spirit, right? Getting husbandry in your spirit, always planting seeds, always working in the spirit, always laboring in the spirit, always got your hand on the plow, right? Because that's what our forefathers doing. They always had their hand to the plow. They always planting something, right? They was planting things year round, right? Because some things, and we're gonna get into that, like for instance, there were some plants that they would plant in the spring because it wouldn't get ripe until, I mean, not spring, they didn't plant until the winter. They planted in the winter, but it didn't get ripe until the spring, right? So, and we're gonna get into that, right? And so it's beautiful. So we're gonna get into that, right? It says Pentecost, also called Feast of Harvest, right? That's when you have Pentecost, which is coming up, right? Well, not coming up, but that's the next big holiday, right? It says barley and wheat were planted in autumn and ripened in spring. So they planted the wheat and the barley. They planted that way in autumn, right? So let's go to this. Hold on. Let me get this precept real fast. All right. Proverbs 6. I'm going to Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 6. So when you think about it, basically our forefathers always working. So in this truth, bro, there's no time to be a sluggard, bro. It's always time for husband. You always got something that you be doing. Okay, in the fall, they get things prepared for the spring, right? They always getting in this work, right? It says, let's go to this. It says this Proverbs 6 and 6, right? And I'm gonna start off at verse 8. It says, "Provided her meat in summer and gather her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep?" Right? It says, "How long wilt thou sleep?" A lot of people in this truth, they're being very sluggish, right? They're not trying to put in no work. They're not trying to grind. They're not trying to plant no seeds. They're not trying to water anything. They're not trying to do nothing. They're not trying to get an increase. They're not trying to make provisions. Our forefathers, they was making provisions for the spring. They knew if I don't plant this seed right now, right, in autumn, I will have nothing to bring forth in the spring, right? And how more so now, right? We think about if I don't start being on fire now, well, what I'm gonna bring forth next month, right? What I'm gonna bring forth next week? Because you ain't been studying, you ain't been praying, right? You ain't been meditating on those scriptures, you ain't been doing nothing. So when it's time to bring forth your fruit, what you gonna bring to the Most High? You have nothing because you have been doing nothing, right? So we want to get in the spirit of our forefathers and making provisions early on, right? Making provisions early on. It's time to grind now. It's time to put in work now so you can have something to show forth later, right? Because that's what our forefathers doing, right? So we got to be in the spirit of husbandry in this truth, right? Let's go back. And again, this is part of our culture. This is what our forefathers did. They were very keen, right? Keen and intelligent on this. That they knew about this, right? They grew up living like this. Nowadays, Jake don't know nothing about no plants. They don't know nothing about no wheat, no barley. They don't know nothing about planting seeds, right? It's crazy. It says, barley and wheat were planted in the autumn and ripened in the spring. Barley matured faster and would be harvested sooner. The first fruits of grain offered during the festival of unleavened bread. So during during the feast of unleavened bread, they would eat barley, right? They would eat barley. That's what they would eat, right? They would eat barley. And it says in early stages of Israelite settlement, the most important cereal was barley, right? So that was a staple for our community, was barley. And I'm gonna get a visual on y'all for y'all what barley look like, right? Images, right? So this is what barley looks like, right? This is what barley looks like. So this was a big staple for the Israelites, right? Very big staple, right? And again, this is what our people ate, right? So again, let's go back to it. Right. So it says, and would have been Salaki, it says, because of the necessity of settled fringe areas, the barley's tolerance of harsh conditions. Right. And you gotta think about these things on a spiritual level. It says the barley was able to basically tolerate harsh conditions. And we got to be able to tolerate harsh conditions. Sometimes we go through trials, right? Afflictions, turmoil, and different things like that. But we gotta tolerate harsh conditions. Sometimes we get put in some sticky situations, right? But we gotta persevere, right? And we gotta make sure that we constantly put in this work, that we constantly working all year round, right? Because you got people, they get themselves set up. All right, man, I gotta get myself ready for Passover. I gotta get my spirit right for Passover. Well, what about the rest of the year? Right? Because our forefathers, they weren't just getting the wheat. All right, we just gotta get wheat ready for the spring. Right? We just gotta get barley ready for the spring. But what about the rest of the year? What you gonna eat for the rest of the year? What you gonna do for the rest of the year? Right? So you got Pentecost coming up. What spiritual fruit are you going to offer the Lord when Pentecost comes? Right? So you still got to keep grinding and maintaining right now. Passover, you done did what you need to do for Passover, but you got to keep that thing going because you got to have something to show forth in the first fruits. Right? And what's going to be the thing that they show forth in the first fruit? That's your wheat. Right? So yeah, you done got through the Passover. Right? Now you got to still keep grinding. Now you got to still keep going. Now you got to tend to that wheat. Right? Now you got to tend to the other crops. Right? And spiritually, I'm saying now you gotta keep on continuing whatever you was doing, whatever you was working on. If you was working on, hey man, I've been dealing with pride, or I've been dealing with lust, whatever it is. Hey, keep working on that thing. Keep tending to it. Keep purging it out. Right? Continue purging out that spiritual leaven. Right? Keep that thing away from you. Right? Keep going. Right? Keep striving. Don't just because Passover's over with, now you can relax. All right, I made it through Passover season. No, it's still work to be done. It's still things that we gotta do. Just like how our forefathers, it was constant work. Okay, Passover's over with. All right, we still got crops that we gotta show for first fruits. So we still got work we gotta put in, right? It says the amount of distribution of rainfall together with soil conditions limit the area of Eretz Israel where the wheat was cultivated in coastal valleys, the valley of Jezreel, right? It says in the upper Jordan Valley and Bethshan Valley, the Israelites did not conquer these areas at first, right? We know when we go through the history, right? So what they was do is when the rain, because of the rain, right? The rain would soften the soil, right? And that's when that'll be the peak timing, right, for the Israelites to plant us so-called Black Native American, our people to plant their barley and their wheat and things like that, right? Wheat ripens later than barley, and according to Jezreel Manual, right, the Jezar Manual, it says was harvested during the sixth agriculture season, right? End of April, end of May, right? That's around the time of May. May you got Pentecost around that time, right? So I want to say not Pentecost. I want to say it's a little bit later, right? So let's keep going. So it says where the climate is warmer, as in Shephelah, whatever. Jordan Valley crops mature earlier than in regions where the climate is cool, as in the Judean hill country in the Galilee. Right? In Galilee, for example, part of grain harvest would be completed after Pentecost, especially in years in which Pentecost came as early as mid-May, right? Even though all the crop might not be harvested by Pentecost, Pentecost celebrated the entire grain harvest, right? So they was this was about the whole grain harvest, including a small amount of grain to be harvested shortly after the festival. So here is a graph, right, showing what our forefathers doing, right? It says harvesting and ingathering based on modern agricultural practices in Israel. Sorry. So, anyways, so as you see, throughout the year, they're constantly doing something, right? And that's how we gotta be in the spirit throughout the year. Through the spirit, we constantly be doing something. You get ready for Passover, right? Now you're getting your fruits ready for Pentecost, right? You're getting your fruits. Now you got Pentecost, right? You done did what you gotta do for Pentecost. Now what you doing? Now you put forth all these different fruits and things like that. Cause what's the next big harvest after that? The time of Feast of Tabernacles, right? Your tabernacles, right? That's the end of the end harvest. Let me get that right. Let me get that real fast. Right. So yeah, let me get that first. So before I go there, I'm gonna show y'all the things that they would bring forth right around that time would be your pomegranates, your olives, your dates, and your figs, right? So let's go to this Leviticus. All right, let's go to it's not. It's right here. It says Numbers chapter 23 and verse 33. All right. So yeah. It says, and the Lord spake to Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of the 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days. Right. The first day, you should have a holy convocation. You should do no servile work therein. Right. 7 days you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you. And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord as a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. There are feasts, right? It says, these are the feasts of the Lord which ye shall complain, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocation, to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering, a meat offering, a sacrifice, drink offerings, right? And so when you were to go into a lot of your drink offerings and things like that, again, these different offerings that you had to do, you had to have something to offer, right? When it goes into your for instance, your drink offerings, how do we make our drink? A lot of our drinks stem from your pomegranates, your grapes, your vines, things like that. So you had to have the appropriate kind of agricultural plants to produce the drink, to have drink offerings. You had to have those things to do that, right? You just can't say, well, hell, I just got some drink. You got to have it's a whole process, right? So like it's a whole process. So our forefathers say, okay, I need this. Even for instance with the lamb, right? Even with lamb, you had to have lamb. You had to take care of lamb to have burnt offering, right? So it's always work our forefathers had to do just to make offerings to the Lord, right? Just to make offerings to the Lord, you gotta tend to the lamb. You gotta tend because you can't bring a sickly or broken up lamb or diseased lamb to the Most High, right? So you had to tend to the lamb. You gotta take care of the lamb, right? You gotta take care of the ground. You gotta take care of your plants, right? You gotta take care of your crops, right? And so, with that being said, our forefathers was constantly taking care of things, tending to things, i.e., husbandry. So we gotta be husbandry. You gotta have husbandry through the spirit, right? And it's a good thing to do husbandry now as well. Like if you got the means to where you got a land, you might have land, and you can have goats and things like that. If you can do that, hey, go for it. And it definitely would be wise, have your own garden. That's kind of cool too. But think about it in the spirit. You want to always tend to yourself, especially if you're a leader of a congregation. You want to make sure that your flock's okay. You want to make sure that your sheep okay, right? You want to make sure that your congregation is everything smooth, everybody okay, right? You got your household, like even if you got a household, right? You got to make sure you tend to your household, make sure your wife's okay, make sure your children are okay, make sure that you're okay in the spirit, right? You should have what you need. Constantly working, constantly putting in some work, tend to something, taking care of something, right? And also, constantly taking care of your spirit, because your spirit man needs a lot of work, right? Why? Because we have this flesh. This flesh is always here. This old man that's always here. That's why Paul said, I die daily. You constantly killing off the old man. So you constantly working. Right? We constantly in battle with the flesh. We have different battle. And you might at one moment and that's just like again, we think about husbandry, right? At one part of the year, you probably dealing with covetousness, right? Then the next you beat covetousness, right? Then something later on you start dealing with, just like with husbandry, right? At first they might was catching hell, right, with the barley. Dang, the barley it's not doing what I want to do, so I got to put in this extra work to make it grow like this, to do it like that. Then they got done with the barley. Now they dealing with the pomegranate. Dang, this pomegranate. And that's how it is, right? We constantly tend to something. We constantly working on something, right, throughout the year. So we just because Passover done went by, and it's still work you got to put in. It's still work you got to put in, and that's it's beautiful how the Most High set it up. We always doing something. We always doing something. We look at it with a spiritual eye. You always doing something, getting ready for a harvest. What's the biggest harvest that we're getting ready for? It's a great harvest that's coming, right? Let's go to it. There's a big harvest that's coming, and you gotta be ready for that, right? Let's go to it. I'm gonna go to the book of Joel first. Then we gonna go to the book of Matthew. All right. There's a big harvest that's coming up. There we go. All right. All right, here you go. We're gonna start at Joel chapter 3. We're gonna start at verse. We can start at verse 12. It says, now we're gonna start at verse 11. It says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, right? And gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord, right? And let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, right? It's going to the battle at the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's a big battle that's to come when Yahweh Shah comes, right? It says, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put in ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Right? So in the spirit, right, it's always a harvest, but there's also a spiritual harvest that's to come. Right? It says, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. There's a harvest to come where the Lord is going to cut down the wicked. It says, put ye in our sickle. He's going to cut down the wicked. Right? Let's go to another precept on that. Matter of fact, I'm not going to go to Matthew. I'm going to go to the book of Revelation. Right? And this, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Let's go to Revelation 14 and we're going to start at verse 14. It says, and I look. So when we talk about husbandry, right, the Bible, we think about the husbandry, it's all in the scriptures, right? You got actual carnal, right, physical husbandry, but you also have spiritual husbandry. You got a spiritual harvest, right? You also got a physical harvest, and you got a spiritual harvest, right? Let's keep going. It says, and I looked, and behold, a white cloud, right? A big, huge chariot, right? It says, upon the cloud, one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. What is a sickle? Some brothers and sisters might not know what a sickle is, right? Look how much husbandry really is deep into our heritage, right? When the Lord refers to when he comes back, he's going to be carrying a sickle. A sickle is a farming tool. That's what a sickle is, right? You see these? Oh, it's lucky. Right? This is a sickle. This is a sickle. It's a farming tool to cut down crops. Right? It's a farming tool to cut down crops. So it says when, oh, I'm slacking. So this is a sickle, right? So it says when Yahweh Shah comes, it says he's going to have a sickle in his hand, right? So he's to cut down the wicked, right? When you read again, when you read Joel chapter 3, right? It was saying, well, hey, the harvest is ripe. Hey, the Lord's finna cut down the he's finna cut down. He said the wickedness is let me get it again. And Joel, I don't want to butcher it. Right? I don't want to butcher it. It says, yeah. It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. But I'll read up. It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Right? So this and we Jehoshaphat means Yahweh judge, right? So the heathen is they're going to get their judgment. Right? It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. And they're going to get cut down for that. Right? They're going to get cut down. Right? So, let me go back to the, what we was at in, Revelation, because I just want to, read that real fast. Go back to Revelation 14. Right. Revelation 14. And it says 14, and we gonna go to verse 15. It says, and another angel came out of the temple crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, right? And so Yahweh Shai, he's gonna come with a mighty chariot, right? It says, thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. Right? And he sat on the cloud and thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Right? So when you think about husbandry on this level, again, everything husbandry involves our culture. Our walk in this truth is about husbandry. Right? What is one of the things that says? Fruits of the spirit. It's talking fruits, spiritual fruits that you gotta have. Right? Didn't the Lord have a choice vine? Lord didn't got a choice vine. Right? Right, and then not only that, right? Men are referred to as plants. Men are referred to as grass, right? Wheat. He said that he's going to come and separate the wheat from the tares, right? So this whole thing kind of really involves husbandry. On the spiritual level, you understand what I'm saying, right? Let's keep reading. It says, and another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, right? And matter of fact, I'm gonna hold this. Matter of fact, I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna go to another precept too. It says, and another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. Another angel came out from the altar which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, thrust in thy sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. Is it talking about this angel in heaven? He just chopping down, he getting the best grapes that he done found on earth. No, it's talking about the elect. It says, gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. It's talking about the elect, right? Right. So let's kind of like, the point is me bringing out these precepts to understand how much husbandry is really talked about in the scriptures. Right. It's talked about on a high level throughout the scriptures. Right. Let's go to this, because again, this is a form of harvesting. Right. It's a form of harvesting. Right. Let's go to the book of James. Right. Let's go to the book of James, chapter 5. Right. Again, another example of husbandry, right? Be patient, therefore, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman, right, waited for his precious fruit, of the earth. The same fruit that is talking about in Revelation chapter 14 that has ripened. That is what Yahweh Shai is waiting on, right? And have long patience for it, right? Until he received the early and latter rain. Again, that's going to husbandry. When our forefathers, before they would plant the barley, what they would do, they was dependent on the rain, right? It says, be also patient, be also patient, right? Establish your heart, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh, right? So again, it's going into husbandry, how the Lord, he's waiting for precious fruit, right? And that precious fruit, when that precious fruit is right, that's when the Lord is going to come, right? Matter of fact, let's go to the book of Second Esdras, right? It also talks about that as well, right? Right. Let me get this. Right, yeah. This is what it is. Second Esdras 9 and 21. Let's go there. Matter of fact, I want to get the whole chapter. Right. Again, it's going into husbandry again. Right. So it says, now we gonna read up, man. This joint is so beautiful, right? But when you actually look into it again, right? Our culture was husbandry. When you read about the Bible, it refers to husbandry on a high level. All these different harvests, different grapes, different vines, right? Some are spiritual, right? And some are actual physical, but a lot of it is spiritual, right? I'm read this too. So it says, it's 17, it's 9 and 17. It says, he answered me saying, like as the field is, so is also the seed. As the flowers be, such are the colors also. Such as the workman, such also as is the work. And as the husbandman is himself, so is his husbandry also. For it was the time of the world. Again, it's going into husbandry, right? It's a bit, and then we gonna get into the next. We're gonna get to another example of what we're talking about, right? But for it was a time of the world, right? Now I'm gonna pause right here, right? And I want to go to, because it's a very pinnacle part where it says, for it was the time of the world. There's a precept, right, that speaks about the same thing. That's worded the same thing, right? I'm gonna show y'all, right? Right, let's go to Matthew chapter 13. Right. Right. So let's go Matthew chapter 13, and we're gonna go to, man. We're gonna read verse 36, right? So we can understand when it's talking about husbandry and all these different things. Right. It said the world, it said for this the world, right? I'm gonna read it again. It says, and as the husbandry, and as the husbandman himself, so is his husbandry also, right? And we know that Yahweh Shai is the husbandman, right? It says, for it was the time of the world, right? The time of the world. What is it talking about? Right. Let's go to Matthew chapter 13, right? And let's go to verse 36. Then Yahweh Shai sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came up to him, saying, declare unto us the parable, right? So they asked him about the parable of the wheat and the tares, right? So he answered and said unto them, he that sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. So Yahweh Shai, right? What is he doing? He's husbandry. Yahweh Shai is sowing seed, right? So again, husbandry is not just a part, it's about, bro, this truth involves husbandry, right? It involves husbandry, right? Working, sowing seed, things growing, things dying, right? Things bringing forth fruit, plants bringing forth good fruit, plants bringing forth bad fruit, good plant, bad plant, right? That's this truth. You got the tares, the wicked. You got the wheat. That's the righteous, right? You got the wicked that bring forth bad fruit. You got the righteous, they bring forth good fruit, right? The wicked, they bring forth that spoiled, nasty, moldy fruits, right? Sour fruits, right? Then what does the righteous bring forth? That good, ripe fruit, big amounts, right? Big harvests, right? That's what it's all about, right? Let's keep reading. It says the field is the world. So just like how we just talking about in Second Esdras, right? Chapter 9, it says, for it was the time of the world. The same thing, this that field that he's talking about husbandry, right? Let's get back. Slakia. Slakia. Oh, there it is. Right. So it says, the field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, the elect, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. Right? It says, I'm gonna just keep reading. It says the enemy that sold them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world. It says the harvest is the end of the world. Right? So when we go back into again, right? In our culture, you have all these different harvests, right? They had the spring harvest, you had the summer harvest, you had the harvest that was the harvest of end gathering, right? Around the time of Feast of Tabernacle, right? So now you got a spiritual harvest, right? That says a harvest that's the end of the world, right? So when you think about this truth, you want to make sure that you're constantly putting that husbandry, that work in your field, tending to your field, right? That's you tending to your field, right? When you go into husbandry, right, and you can learn so much from really growing crops. When you grow crops, it's so much work that you have to do. You can't just sit there and say you got a garden and you water it one day and then you don't come back to it for a month or so and expect that your garden is gonna be okay. It's work that you gotta be constant doing. You gotta be picking up weeds, right? Sometimes certain plants need you to have to use foliage, where what you would do is you would get rid of some unnecessary leaves, right, that don't really matter on the plant, right? So that when the plant do bring forth fruit, that all the nutrients is going to the fruit. So instead of like what you would do, let's say you have a plant, right? You got a plant. You got a plant. There's always different leaves on the plant. Well, the bottom leaves, the leaves that's not really getting much sunlight, you would get rid of those leaves. So, point of me saying all that is it's always work that you got to do when you have a garden. You got weeds that pop up, right? So you got to go in, you got to pluck the weeds out the garden, right? Because if you leave the weeds in the gardens, then the weed, they gonna end up soaking in the nutrients that could be going to your plant or to your crops, right? And then now you know what I'm saying? You gotta take that out. What is the weeds? What's the weeds in the spiritual scenario? Right? That's the distractions. That's demons that try to hop on you. What you gotta do? What you gotta rebuke them. You gotta fast them to get them off you. You gotta do whatever to do to get these demons away from you. Right? So hey, get back. The same thing when you plucking up those weeds. Right? Because you really want your crop to flourish. You want to get all the nutrients that it needs to grow. And that's what we need. We need everything that we can to grow because we want to constantly be increasing it, constantly growing in this truth. You don't want to be that stagnant plant, that plant that has nothing, is bringing forth nothing. You just sitting there. And that's what a lot of people do during the time after Passover. They don't put all that work in Passover and they stop. Then you don't hear them from until the time for Day of Atonement. That's when they start getting themselves. All right, I gotta start calling these people. I gotta start doing this, saying this. Well, how about let's not wait until the time of the Day of Atonement to now you want to get right back on the saddle. No, let's stay on the side. Let's stay in that field. Let's continue working throughout the year, right? Because you got Pentecost, so try to have some fruit that you can present to the Lord during the time of Pentecost. Right, during the summer harvest, what you gonna bring? What you gonna bring forth? Right. Then after you get done with that, you need to be grinding so you can have something to bring forth during the Feast of Tabernacles, the harvest of end gathering. Right. You gotta have something to show for. right? So again, when it comes to husbandry, having a field, having a harvest, right, having crops, have husbandry, it's work. It is work that you got to do. This truth ain't. That's why I say not to be slothful. Don't be idle. This truth is not for the slothful. There's not people that just don't want to put in work, right? Because if you don't want to put in work, your garden is going to look horrible. Your crops is going to look horrible. Whatever seed, whatever plant you trying to plant is going to look trash. Why? Because you're not tending to it. You're not taking care of it, right? You're not putting in the work, right? So we got to be putting in this work, like just like our forefathers, just like Yahweh Shai, right? Who was the top tier husbandman, right? He's top tier, right? Sowing all these seeds, sowing all this good fruit, right? So man, and it's so much like, man, it's beautiful, man. But I'm gonna go back to second Esdras, right? And then I'm gonna go back to I'm just gonna go back to that article too, show y'all some more stuff about our different husbandry and things like that. But all right, so yeah, what was that? All right, we're gonna start at verse, we're gonna jump down. It says, we at second Esdras 9 and we at 20 right now. So I considered the world, and behold, there was peril because of the devices that were coming to it. And I saw and spared it greatly, and have kept me a grape of the cluster, and a plant of a great people. The Lord, it says, I kept me a grape of the cluster. So it's all these different kind of grapes, but he has a choice grape, right? It says a plant of a great people. Again, husbandry, right? Yahweh Shah said what he's doing. He's waiting, what it says in James chapter 5. He's waiting for that precious fruit, right? He's waiting for that precious fruit, right? So it says, let the multitude perish then, which was born in vain, and let my grape be kept in my plant, right? And it says, for with great labor have I made it perfect. So the Lord said, with great labor has he made it perfect, right? It's crazy. So, and bro, just look at this, just read it again. It says, let the multitude perish which was born in vain. So when whoever was born, it is what it is, right? But the elect, it says, and let, because that's what's going to, and let my grape be kept, and let my grape be kept. That grape is the elect, the chosen, the 1/3, right? It says in my plant, his people. It says, for with great labor have I made it perfect. It says with great labor has he made it perfect. What happens when the elect get the kingdom? What's gonna happen then? What's gonna happen? They gonna be perfect. So it's crazy. It's like you got brothers and sisters. We can't be making excuses in this time. Lord said, with great labor have I made it perfect. So Lord put in great labor. He's putting in great labor to do what? To make the elect perfect, to make his chosen perfect. Because you're not doing it on your own. You're not making yourself perfect. It's the Lord. It's the Lord doing it. Anybody that you see that's on fire, that's diligent, that's coming out, bringing out precepts, doing exhortation, doing that, being mighty, all these different things, that's not really them. That's the Most High that's using them as a vessel. Because that's the Most High Spirit that he put on them to do what they do. Without the Most High, they couldn't do it. Point blank, period. Right? So the Lord, he's putting in great labor. He's putting in great amount of labor to make the elect perfect. And that's going to happen. The chosen, they're going to be perfect, right? The 1/3, they're going to get perfection, right? And we know that, right? Because that's when they had the new covenant. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna have they're gonna have the laws and their hearts, the inward parts. They're going to be perfect. So right now, right, it's time to be putting in that work, right? Putting in that work, trying to strive for perfection, right? Putting in that great labor, just like Yahweh Shai. right? Just like how we gotta keep putting this work constantly throughout the year, right? Don't just not pass over. No. It's still another harvest that you gotta prepare for, and that's what after that is another one. So you want to constantly be bringing forth fruit, constantly bringing forth things through the Spirit, right? So let's go back to this real quick. So so this is a graph to show y'all, harvesting, right? This is just because I don't want to get too far to carry away, but I really want to show y'all like this was what our forefathers owned. They really like understood this. So we gotta, just like how they going in and we looking at this, you look at it with your spiritual lens, put on your spiritual lens when you're reading this thing, man. Think about it like that. So it says, after Pentecost, most of the harvest was fruits, grapes, olives, dates, figs, pomegranates, and numerous fruits, seeds, and vegetables of lesser importance, right? So after that, you had that's when you had a more increase of your fruits and vegetables and things like that, right? So let's keep going. It says contrast Deuteronomy 11:10-11. It says contrast Egypt's irrigated vegetable gardens with Canaan hilly terrain and seasonal rains, implying that vegetables were less common in Canaan. Proverbs 15:17 indicates the vegetables were among the least esteemed. The Bible has few references to gardens, cultivated vegetables, wild plants. The small number of references to vegetables in lower guard in which vegetables were held suggests very strongly that vegetables did not constitute an important part of the Iron Age diet in Eretz Israel. So basically, it's saying in all those many words, they didn't have they had vegetables, but they mostly ate a lot of grains and fruits. So that's like a smaller part of their diet, they did eat vegetables, wasn't as much as they ate the grains and the fruit. Right. It says, now let's look at the major crops after Pentecost. Right. So after Pentecost, right, grapes were the first major crop to ripen in a good year. When the grain yield was great, threshing and grape picking overlap. That would be in June, technically in spring, summer. They talking about that rest of them don't matter what they talking about. They talking about something else. Says the importance of grapes and olives is illustrated by the fact that the Essenes had wine, right, and oil first fruits festivals similar to biblical first fruits offering for grain. These festivals also indicate a relative timing of these crops. The new wine festival came 50 days or 7 weeks after Pentecost. Until new wine was offered, no one could drink any of the new juice. Temple Scroll columns 19-21. So these are different sources that they use to get this information, right? So it says 14 weeks after Pentecost, shortly before the Feast of Trumpets, right? The blowing of the trumpets, right? Was the new olive oil festival. No one could use new olives until some oil had been offered, right? Columns 21-22. That's from the Temple Scroll, right? That's a source that they're using to get this information. So they have different on this site. They have different sources where they gather this information about the different things that we ate. I mean, not different things, different harvests we had and what we would do and how we would grow them and things like that. But anyways, what it's going into, right? We're gonna keep reading. It says the grape harvest was usually completed before tabernacles, but most of the olive harvest came after the autumn festivals. In ancient Israel, the primary harvest season extended from April to November. This harvest period might be subdivided into 3 seasons and 3 major crops: the spring grain harvest, the summer grape harvest, the autumn olive harvest. Right now, think about this. It says 3 major seasons 3 major crops. Got Passover. That's the first. That Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's the first major one, right? First major. That's the first major event, right, of our year. What's the second one? Pentecost, right? The Feast of First Fruits, right? What's the next one? Feast of Tabernacles. These were the main. These were the 3 that all men had to show up for, right? It's 3. It just said, and that's why I say you gotta look at it as in a spiritual lens. It's 3 seasons. 3 times of the year, 3 times in the year was let's get it. We just gotta get it. We gotta get it. Right? Deuteronomy 16:16. It says, 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God, right? In the place which ye shall choose. In the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, right? Pentecost, in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty. So each season, right? Each season, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. So each season, you need to be bringing forth some fruit. Each season, you need to be you got to have something you got to bring forth. You got to have something that you got to bring forth, right? Each season. So again, going back to what we was talking about, how husbandry is a part of our heritage, is a part of our culture. So we got to have that just balance of that physical husbandry and spiritual husbandry. Because guess what? Just because our forefathers they was doing husbandry, they don't mean they couldn't. They didn't have time for keeping the commandments. Also, they had to have a just balance. They had to be putting in the work, taking care of the crops and agriculture, but they also had to be doing things in the spirit as well. That's just like us. We got all these different things that's going on in our life, but throughout these different seasons, right, we need to be bringing forth some fruit. We cannot come before the Lord empty. So when Pentecost, which is coming up, you need to be having some. You need to be putting in some your fruit now. Tend to your wheat now. Get it, grow up. Get your wheat right. Your wheat game up, as in your spirit. Get your spiritual game right. So when Pentecost come around, guess what? You got something to show for it. You don't want to come before the Lord empty. Because Passover with now you done so you stop now. I ain't gotta pull a fast no more to Passover with. Oh, I ain't gotta read that much now. I ain't gotta meditate that much. I ain't gotta pray as much now because I made it past that. No, trying to put in work. Right? Don't be that Israelite that disappear and then you reappear again. A lot of times, with a lot of brothers like to reappear during the time of Day of Atonement. If you busted your behind all year putting in work, now you got less stuff to worry about on Day of Atonement. Because now you got, think about it though, right? Negroes they'll go off right after Passover, they'll go off and they weren't being sincere. Now this scriptures, but they weren't really being sincere. Now they got to list this long of things they got to atone for on the Day of Atonement because they've been freaking off all year. All year they've been freaking off. Now they got to list this long of things they got to deal with for the Day of Atonement versus busting your behind and constantly putting your hands to the plow, right, and staying active in this thing. So when Day of Atonement do come around, hey, you might have a list like this. Something like that, right? You might have a little few things you gotta, hey, I gotta atone for that, cause I tripped off, because stuff happens, right? But you don't want to be that person, that woman, or that man that freaked out all year, right? Now Day of Atonement came up. Now this your list, because you done freaked off, right? You don't want to be that, man. So each season, right, you got to be bringing forth some fruit. Each season, bring forth the fruit, all right? Put in the work. Right, and then think about too, right? That harvest that's to come, right? When Yahweh shot. Oh, let me get that. I'm gonna close out with that though. But I'm gonna get ready. Slocky, hold on. That's not what I want to do. I want to show y'all this other article I got too. Right, this what I want to show y'all this too. Right, so it says this. It says the numerous references, and again, if I didn't state this, which I didn't, but all these different articles are for educational purposes. It's our thoughts and comments on this content and things like that. So we just using these articles for educational purposes. So it says the numerous references to the growth of grain, which are found in the law of Moses, indicate that it was expected that the Israelites would become an agricultural people, which we are an agricultural people. That's a husbandry. So we've been talking about the whole lesson, right? I want to kind of jump down though. It says in Palestine, plowing is done after yearly rains have softened the earth, right? These rains usually come latter October, part of November. If they do not come, then the farmer must wait for them before he can plow his ground, right? So that's going into plowing. So they had to put in work, right? A lot of young people don't know what plowing is, but like I had a the dude that raised my grandma. He used to he had a garden and he used to had a plow and he would actually plow the field, right? So how our forefathers did it, they would wait till the ground was a little bit softer to plow. So if they didn't get that rain, right, and then that's when you see how also when the Lord didn't give the rain, how much it affected them, right? When those famines came about, that rain was something serious. They needed rain to soften the ground. They needed rain to water the crops. They really needed that rain, right? So it's crazy. And then again, you go into right. I want y'all to think about what we just read. Well, how I said how it says how they rated for the rain, right? How they needed the rain. Now I'm gonna show y'all something. This is how you know Yahweh Shah is literally the master husbandry, master husbandman. Like he's so ill with it. Look at this. It says, "Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waited for the precious fruit of the earth, and have long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain." So he knows what he's doing. He know, okay, I gotta get this rain. You know what I'm saying? It's so crazy how spiritual it is. You gotta look at when you look at husband, you gotta put on your spiritual lenses, man. You gotta put on your spiritual lenses. Right. So this article just basically goes into Salaki. So this article basically goes into different plowing methods that they had, right? And when it goes to the yoke, you know what I'm saying? The yoke, like when they had two animals, I'm reading so y'all kind of get an idea of how our forefathers really was getting down, right? So it says the yoke is a rude stick that fits the necks of cattle. Two straight sticks project down each side, and a cord at the end of these sticks, and underneath these cattle's necks holds the yokes on the necks. These yokes of wood are often spoken of in scriptures, right? And that's why even Yahweh said, hey, and about being unequally yoked, right? They make references being unequally yoked, right? And then when you're dealing with cattle, that's also a part of husbandry as well. That's part of agriculture and things like that, right? Because they would use the cattle, they would tie the yokes around the neck and have them help to plow the fields, right? That's what they would use. So again, and the Bible makes references of yokes, right? Yokes being around our neck. Hell, we had yokes around our neck when we got to America, right? So it's again, like I said, you can really, and I might just do another video on it or something like that. But you can talk about husbandry forever in the Bible, man. it's so much that even what it says, I'm gonna say it even first, it make a reference to wisdom using the yoke. Matter of fact, we're gonna get that. I'm gonna get that. So y'all can really see, man, that this thing, husbandry is a big part of our walk in this thing, man. For real, for real. It's a big part. You really gotta look at this thing on this level. Where is that? No, that's. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see. Bear with me. If I can find it, if I find it, I'm gonna get it. But I can't find it, I ain't gonna worry about it. But it's, I want to say it said yoke. Let me see. Lord. Dang. I can't find that thing. I can't find that joint. But yeah, that's but again, you know, I'm just keep moving on. But again, you know what I'm saying, when you go into husbandry, like it's a big part of our culture and our spiritual walk in this thing. You really gotta get things with a spiritual lenses, right? But you got that yoke. That's one thing. The gold. A gold is carried by a native plowman today, which also used in Bible times. It is a wooden rod varying in length from 5 to 7 feet with sharp points at the end. With this, the farmer can hurry up his slow moving animals. It was such an ox goad that was used by Shamgar in slaying 600 Philistines. Right, so you know they got these different things. The use of ox. Right, so I suggest brothers and sisters like kind of dig into it. It's a lot of different things that they kind of talk about. You know what I mean? But this is our heritage, man. This is our culture, and it's all when you look at it with a spiritual. Again, the Bible refers to so many of these things that we're talking about. Threshing floor. You hear about that. You hear about that a lot in the Bible. Threshing floor. Oh, I did want to. I did want to. I did want to get this one precept. I did want to get this precept because it. Let me get this right quick. Most likely, I want to get this precept because this something. No, come on, don't do that. Bear with me, yo. Think I like ain't want to work just then. Right, so I want to show y'all this. It's Isaiah 11:1. It says, "And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots, and the spirit of the Lord shall rest." And the spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. Right? Who they talking about? Yahweh Shai. But what do they refer to him as? A branch shall grow out of his roots. So again, talking about your husband. A husband is a big part of our culture, our heritage, and again our spiritual walk. Let me get another one. I got that one, but it was another one I want to get to. Because it's one in One is Zechariah, I want to say. What is this? Is it Zechariah? Make sure. I want to say that's it, but nah, that's not what I'm looking for though. Oh, yeah, all right. Jeremiah 33 and 15. Jeremiah 33 and 15. In those days, at that time, will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David. He shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. Yahweh Shai. Again, being referred to as the branch, right? So, again, when it comes to our spiritual walk in this thing, our heritage, so it involves husbandry, right? You know what I'm saying? So you really want to get into husbandry. It's a beautiful thing through the spirit, right? Very beautiful through the spirit. But I'm gonna leave off with this precept though. You go with this precept. Then I'm gonna all right, there we go. It says this. This is Matthew chapter 24 and verse 29. Right? It says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds of earth, or four winds from one end of the earth to the other. So just like how we talking about these different harvests where they gather these different crops, and when they gather the olives, the grapes, the wheat, the barley, there's going to be a time to come, where Yahweh Shai, he's going to have a harvest, right? He's going to gather together the elect. That choice grape, right? That choice grape, that plant of a people, right? So Lord willing, brothers and sisters, keep putting in that work, that husbandry work, right? And grounded through the spirit. And Lord willing, you be those ones that's gathered together, right, with Yahweh Shai, right, and beamed up in their chairs and see the kingdom, right? So Lord willing, that was edifying through the spirit. And shalom to all those brothers and sisters that popped in, Azariah, Aaron, Sister Yahweh Datia. All right, shalom to everybody. Lord willing, that was edifying through the spirit. Kwame Allah, shalom, shalom, shalom.